Are you ready to recap the wins against the Trump administration? There are plenty of them. Now, there have been a few setbacks. I'm not going to talk about them unless I have time at the end. I'm going to first focus on the wins, and then I'm going to talk about 4 cases related to legal immigrants, people here in the United States legally, but have been plucked off the streets and airports and lied on and said they were supporting Hamas, which they were not. And the outcome of those cases, they're all been positive for the most part. And then finally, on the back end, I'm going to talk about 5 law firms that the Donald Trump administration has attacked. He's issued executive orders. 2 of them capitulated and actually settled to this tit for tat to corruption, and the other 3 actually fought back and are fighting back and actually are winning. So it pays to not cooperate in advance, resist. So let's go through the cases first. I'll show you my little setup here. Look at that. I got myself a little boom mic in my little corner office here in my dining room. Okay, so what I'm going to do this is I'm going to put the cases below the name of the case, and then let's say right here, I'm going to put either a news article or the caption so you can see the parties and see the actual case number if you want to look at it. Get my outlasting47.com, which is a companion document to the work I do on social media, sharing with you like dissecting and just explaining these cases. It's a great way to support me. As I update them, you get the free update. So you pay for it once, $7.99. So let's get started. The first one is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is one of the agencies that the Trump administration attacked early on. Doge, Elon Musk particularly. So a district court judge, Amy Berman Jackson, said that it's probably a good idea to have a temporary restraining order to stop the further dismantling of CFPB while she deliberates and while we decide whether or not they have the authority to do that, dismantle the agency. So that's a win. Post-production, I wanted to point out, remember in my past videos, I share how the Trump administration would say one thing on the record in the courts, but then when they go in front facing in the media and social media, they're saying other things that contradicts what they put in the courts. So this judge noticed that after the Trump administration seemingly, as according to her, it says, had a genuine recognition that there were certain duties that had to be performed to comply with the law while the agency was still open. And then the material in the record showed that they did that more likely was a charade for the courts because, it's essentially the court's saying in order it looks like in order for you to dismantle this agency, you need to do these 10 steps. So we're going to pause. And then the Trump administration says, okay, we'll put them back. And then they make plans to do another thing that's not those 10 steps. So the judge is essentially saying, you can't do that. Like, this is all fake. So I'm glad that, they're catching on. They act like we're not watching, like the plaintiffs aren't watching. The second win is that a district court had already decided that the Trump administration could not take back the $6-7 million, whatever, how much money that had already been allocated to states to help them recruit for talent, to help them fund and source and provide more resources and access to underfunded schools in inner city, rural areas as well. The Trump administration, in his anti-DI, anti-diversity, attacked those grants because they said in there, we're going to look for a diverse pool of talent. And to them, that is a bad thing. Mediocre people do not want you to look beyond the typical people. And just by mere words, diverse is what triggered them because they're so fragile to say, no, we can't have diversity, multicultural, that's evil, and stop them. So a district court judge had already said that, no, you have to give them the money. So an appeal court agreed and said, we're not going to actually stop pause that and issue a stay while you appeal. We're just going to let them continue to, get their money back. I'm not sure if I'd shared this before, but the courts had said that the probationary employees that were dismantled by, Judge Oslop said, there was no rhyme or reason for taking away the probationary employees' jobs, so give them back their jobs. And a appellate court decided we're not going to stay, meaning pause the requirement to give those folks their job back while you appeal. So the Trump administration is appealing that decision, but in the meantime, these folks have gone back to work. So that's the third great news. The fourth one is another district court judge has determined that the Trump administration cannot remove people and deport them to a country that's not their origin. Marco Rubio had negotiated with some Central American countries, specifically El Salvador and a few others, to hold people that they deport from the United States. And so the judge said that you cannot remove people to a country that's not their origin unless you first give their attorney notice, and two, give them a chance to defend themselves and have them go through the immigration process, which is not a criminal process, which is not a military process. So that's great. And that backs up the fifth win. And the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, in a 2-1 vote, I think I mentioned this in the previous update, upheld Judge Boasberg's decision to have a stay, pausing and stopping the Trump administration from shipping off people pursuant to that Alien Enemies Act. The Trump administration has since said they're going to evoke the state secrets privilege, and so they're not going to share too much information about their processes pursuant to that privilege, notwithstanding the fact the judge asked them to say why that they didn't violate the order. Donald Trump administration submitted documents saying that, well, the oral order said return them, but in the written order you didn't specifically say return them, so it's a confusion there. There is a hearing that the judge today just said, we're going to have a hearing where you're going to have to explain to me in my face why you did not violate my order. That's going to be April 3rd, and you can listen to it. So if you want to listen to it, the link to with the phone number is in my outlasting47.com tracker, and if you don't have that, get that, and you can listen to that hearing yourself as a member of the public. Another one is the DEI. There had been people whose jobs include diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of their job description, but that's not the sole thing they do. At the National Defense Intelligence Agency and at the FBI, I think the CIA, a couple of defense agencies, and they were concerned that they would lose their jobs pursuant to the cut and paste, view, find all way that DOJ has been like doing their sloppy job, is finding the words diverse and getting rid of that because inept. And so they won. There was an attempt to block their firings, and their firings were temporarily blocked pursuant to a preliminary injunction. So that's great news. Donald Trump's attempt to roll back the temporary protection status, because the TPS status allows the Venezuelans to stay in the country for a certain amount of time period, but definitely over a year. In order to revoke it, there's a bunch of things that needs to be done. So that's why he's losing. He's losing because he doesn't do the proper process. So that's another reason why he lost, because the TPS says to revoke it, you have to do X, Y, and Z. Donald Trump did none of that. Now let's talk about specifically about the attack on these people who are here legally. So there are 4. One of them, Mahmoud Khalil, got picked up by the airport. First, he was in New York, then they transplanted him to Louisiana. Then his lawyer was like, his wife is here in New Jersey, and the case is here. Here's where he lives, and it's burdensome to have him in Louisiana. And also, can he just get out while this case is appealing? Because he was just exercising his First Amendment right. He is a green card holder. He did nothing. He's not pro-Hamas whatsoever. And the judge didn't get to the substance of that. Instead, that judge just said, yeah, he shouldn't be in Louisiana, and told the Trump administration to remove him back to New Jersey. So he's back in New Jersey and New York. We'll be following that case. And there are 3 other ones. In all 3 of these cases, all involve students. One was written an article. She's a Turkish grad student. A second one, there was in 2023, they were protesting some students that had gotten removed for barging into a library and disrupting the library. So they expelled those students. So other students decided we're going to protest their expulsion. And one of the students in that protesting someone's expulsion had their name written up in a news article, and Yoson Chung. And so because of that, she was told that she was going to get deported, essentially for exercising her First Amendment rights, supporting someone else who got kicked out. Nothing to do with Hamas, but they're making stuff up as they go along, and they're liars, and they're not trustworthy. Look at the PHEX chat group. Everything they've done is like, I won't get into that. I digress. Get my I digress mug. And then the third one was a Venezuelan activist who was known. She was named at one point in time with influential people, like 100 influential people. She undocumented. She was keeping refuge in a church in Colorado. And it's because of the news account, that's how they knew her. And they arrested her in the Target parking lot. She shouldn't have been at Target. And she also, all of these people got orders from judges saying that you cannot deport them. So they got temporary orders stopping the Trump administration from deporting them until they're given the due process rights, because they're like, we're just going to deport you. So that's the good news in that front. We're still watching the Mahmoud Khalil case, but got on them. So we'll keep you updated. And then finally, what's going on with the law firms. So what Donald Trump has decided to do is attack the firms that either where Robert Mueller once worked, or his colleagues who prosecuted Donald Trump, or like were part of the impeachment hearings, or he came after Skadden Arps and Paul Weiss. Both of those, Paul Weiss agreed to like 50 pro bono hours in favor of Donald Trump's agenda, and then Skadden Arps agreed to 100. Perkins Coie was the first firm to just fight, and even though they're appealing it, I want to make you point out again an example that Pam Bondi was forced to issue memos retracting everything they said is pursuant to Donald Trump's executive order, and so they do follow the orders, and so that's on the record. And because these other firms know that Perkins Coie got relief, Wilmer Hale, who I think at some point they represented like clients that were, they represented people, I don't know about it's punitive, and then also Jenner and Block both got wins. These various reasons why Trump went after them was because they represented voting rights advocacy groups, or they were helping minorities or people of color or diversity, or it's punitive, and so the judges were like, you can't do that. So that's for the most part. So the most part, good news. For I firmly expect the Supreme Court to, in successive cases, back down all of these for being unlawful and unconstitutional. Even though I do see that some of the appellate courts are allowing stays. Okay, one more win I should tell you is that if you don't remember Signalgate, which is essentially where Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who skated by with the narrowest margin of confirmation vote of 51-50, and who infamously said that black soldiers aren't always qualified to be in the U.S. military, while simultaneously recently discovered have given his social media podcaster bro Phil a top senior level job at the Pentagon, Mr. Anti-DI, the DOI hire. Yeah, he ran to a Signal chat, unsecure, non-sanctioned platform for communicating with other top U.S. officials, chatting about a strike against Yemen. And Judge Boasberg was assigned the case where a nonprofit watchdog organization asked that the records be retained pursuant to Federal Records Act. And Judge Boasberg said yes, because a few people said that Project 2025 had identified Signal as a way for these rogue people inside the government, the shadow government, to communicate and do things flagrantly in violation of laws. And Judge Boasberg said that all of the chats must be kept. There are investigations on tap going forward. The Trump administration is trying to sweep it under the rug, but we won't let them. So that's another win. So while editing this video, we had two more wins. The first win is a district court banned the Trump administration from dismantling or the Voice of America radio network, said that there will be irreparable harms on the over 130,000 journalists that work for Voice of America. There will be harm to the service, the community that rely on the radio stations, the networks, the contracts, the international journalists that actually work there and are living here, and that more likely than not, they would win their case ultimately, because the law that created Voice of America requires before the dismantling, it has to be based on stats, rules, public notice, all sorts of stuff. Something as disruptive as dismantling an institution that's been existing for a long time, that was created by Congress, cannot be dismantled without proper procedure. And the Trump administration failed to follow the proper procedure, as they have failed to follow the proper procedure on every single dismantling they've done in the past 67 days. You cannot just do things based on ideology, based on political policy. That's not how it works. There's processes, but the Trump administration does not respect the U.S. Constitution, does not respect our laws, does not respect precedent. It's a lawless, the guy is headed by a criminal felon, so no surprise. And the people that he put in place to do all these things are loyalists who are unqualified for the jobs, who don't know what they're doing, including private sector people like Elon Musk, who have no cares for service, don't know what government does not care, because he's a billionaire and he does not care that the government is supposed to be serving the people. He's all about just cutting the government and cutting anything in the government that is not conservative and right-wing ideology. And there's a horrible mischaracterization of the mandate, because 22% of the people who voted The 77 million people voted for Donald Trump represent 22% of the United States population. I would say this all the time. In each swing state that Donald Trump won, his margin of victory was less than 200,000. And in each of those swing states, there were 1 million people that sat out, which means 75% of the people in each swing state chose to not vote for him. He did not receive over 50% of the vote in the majority. So he doesn't even have over the majority of people did not want him. That is not a mandate. That is you won the war of apathy. More people were empowered. More people were aware of the importance of their vote. We wouldn't have him today, because just because they didn't vote doesn't mean they support him. That's not a mandate. But the overreading, we're experiencing the tyranny of the minority right now. Vote blue in every single election from now on. Make it a referendum on Donald Trump, on Elon Musk, and the Republicans. So that's the first one. That was a little bit longer. The second one is that a court of appeals blocked the Trump administration's request for a stay, meaning they want to pause a lower court's ruling that they cannot ban transgender people from the military. That was a lower court. They asked the Court of Appeals to stay or pause that ruling, and the Court of Appeals says no. So now they're taking it up. So I think we're up at 5 or 6 things that they're asking the Supreme Court to rule on. As I've said before, I firmly believe the Supreme Court is going to knock down every single thing they've asked for, because essentially, what are they asking the Supreme Court to do? They're asking the Supreme Court to allow them to disregard the U.S. Constitution and disregard the process and procedures that require them to actually base all the decisions based on the Administrative Procedure Act. They're saying ignore the Administrative Procedure Act. Let us dismantle this government based on ideology. Ignore what the founders wanted, because the founders wanted against this. They didn't want any party to come in and anyone to behave like king. Ignore the courts, ignore Congress, and do what they want. Because essentially, by doing these things, Congress empower these folks. Congress create these institutions. So ignore Congress and their role. Ignore the courts and just do whatever. It's a king, and that's what the founders did not want. And anyone, especially, it would be a shame if, which is already see Samuel Alito, he's a freaking psycho, and Thomas, essentially, you are in a position where you are co-equal. So when you want to acquiesce your equal share of the hierarchy, or the equal share of balance of power, and to Donald Trump, who, I don't know why they're doing that, because just as Justice Alito, if you plan to live more than 4 or 5 years, no matter what Trump says, he's not going to be here in 4 or 5 years. So you're sacrificing and relinquishing your legacy to somebody who's not going to be here in 4 years. I mean, not necessarily here on this earth, who knows, but not going to be in power. So why are you doing that? And you stop. That's what you're here for. So again, get outlasting47.com is my tracker. I'm going to do a walkthrough. I'm going to update that and do a walkthrough, one of my next videos, so you can see how it works. Again, it's a companion document to support my work here. And you can also follow me on my Substack and inside my private communities, where I share a little bit, get a little bit more loosey-goosey. And then, or you can I'm going to get merch, I Digress merch, and I'm going to get Operation 2/3 merch. And then finally, I have a few other things that I'm going on. Some templates I sell, so you want to support my work there. Otherwise, I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. Share this video. Here is, if you watch this on YouTube, I'm going to put a playlist here. If you're watching this on TikTok, you can look down below and look for the playlist. I'm going to actually walk through my playlist as well soon. So I'm walking through my playlist. I'm going to walk through my chart. Videos coming soon.